At the beginning of this year in Japan, the police busted a Yakuza gang that was responsible for 2,000 crimes. From 2018 to 2023, the group committed over 2,000 robberies of fraudulent shares, with losses estimated at least $27 million. Currently, more than 70 people have already been arrested in Japan. They received instructions through telegrams. The police believe that the head of the Yakuza is a 38-year-old Japanese man nicknamed Luffy Ya. Yakuza is the Japanese mafia. You've probably heard about them from movies or video games. It is considered one of the richest and most prosperous in the world, and its number, according to various estimates, is up to 110,000 people during the heyday of the mafia. Now they call the number about 20,000 Yakuza. Today we will tell you more about this legendary mafia and who it consists of. The most famous Yakuza clans are the Sumiyoshi Kai and the Inagawa Kai and the Yamaguchi Gumi. The latter is considered the richest criminal group on the planet. In 2015, its revenue was more than $80 billion. We will not tell the full story of the development of the Yakuza, but will only touch upon important interesting facts. It is not known exactly when they appeared, but the first criminal group, the Yakuza, is believed to have originated in the 17th century. They were mainly composed of former samurai, bandits, merchants, and gambling enthusiasts. The very word Yakuza means a combination of three cards. 8i9ku, 3ja. Let me clarify, this is the worst combination. The Yakuza cannot be called just bandits. This organization is clearly built according to a vertical hierarchy. In some ways it resembles a traditional family. Head of the organization father, Oyabun, participants children, Kobun. The authority of the head is not criticized, and the clan is more valuable than a real family. The Japanese mafia adopted the rules and traditions from the samurai. Yakuza members should not contradict their elders. Discuss orders, indulge your weaknesses and show leniency towards subordinates. Those who are guilty are punished by the Yubatsuma ritual, which involves amputation of the phalanx of the little finger on the left hand. This is a fairly well-known phenomenon. The ritual must be performed silently by the offender himself, using a wooden hammer or war blade. He wraps the cut part in a scarf and gives it to the head of the clan. In case of repeated offenses, the Yakuza member cuts off the next phalanx or, in general, the entire finger. By the way, there are prosthetic fingers for former members of the Yakuza. You can distinguish the Yakuza from an ordinary person by their characteristic tattoos. Even in the times of the samurai, after each feat of war, certain designs were applied to the skin. Most often you can see images of dragons, samurai, and flowers. Members of the Japanese mafia prefer to hide their tattoos. And only at the Sanzei Matsuri festival they are shown. Yakuza tattoos can be called art, and for every piece of art there is a collector. So, Dr. Irajumi Ya. I once collected one of the creepiest collections. He kept the skin of all kinds of Japanese bandits strewn with national motifs. After death, he skinned them and added to the collection. It is worth noting that the doctor does this with the permission of the Yakuza, and sometimes even offered to pay for a tattoo on the skin of a mafioso so that he would give it back after death. He ended up collecting 2,000 skins from about 3,000 photographs. About 105 skins have survived to this day. Members of the Yakuza almost do not participate in business themselves. In most cases, they engage in racketeering, collecting fees from the owners, which they pay for protection from other gangs. If in our opinion, then this is protection. In large cities, the Yakuza control restaurants, retail outlets, entertainment centers, industrial and transport enterprises, including ports, and recruitment agencies. Yakuza groups have personal offices, some of which can be found on the Japanese police website. So in 2011, the CEO of the Japanese company Olympus Corporation was fired due to the fact that he paid about $1.5 billion to the Yakuza. According to some information, Between 2000 and 2009 the company wrote off more than $6 billion. According to the police, approximately half of this amount went to the Japanese mafia. Something similar happened in 1994, when the vice president of the famous Fuji Film Company was killed with a katana because he refused to pay the mafia. The activities of the Yakuza also extend to prostitution, gambling, trafficking in drugs, weapons, people, smuggling, as well as the porn industry. And despite the fact that the Yakuza mafia groups began their journey as outcasts, over time their structures became firmly woven into society, which allowed them to join politics, supporting and financing parties. In 2012, Japanese Justice Minister Kaisha Tanaka was forced to resign after his Yakuza connections were discovered. The thing is that 30 years earlier he was a guest at the wedding of one of the Yakuza members. According to him, initially he did not realize what company he was in. The Yakuza also often helped the Japanese authorities, guarding both police stations and political guests. For example, in 1960, during the visit of the American president, it was members of the Japanese mafia who ensured security on the streets. At the same time, the Yakuza often causes unrest. In 2007, the mayor of Nagasaki was assassinated by a member of the Yakuza. He was shot by 59-year-old Tetsuya Shiro, one of the leaders of the Sumiyoshi Kai clan. The criminal described his motive by saying that he was dissatisfied with the investigation of the accident, as a result of which the bumper of his car was damaged. A worthy cause. In 2015, a civil war practically occurred in Japan. The largest group of the Japanese Yakuza, the Yamaguchi-gumi, split. Before this happened in the 80s, when there were about 300 armed clashes. The splinter group was called the Kob, Yamaguchi-gumi, and became the third largest existing group in the country. Already in 2016, there were about 50 collisions. The struggle between factions continues in our time. So in April 2023, the owner of a noodle shop was shot dead in Japan. His body was discovered by an employee of the establishment, who had gone to the store to do some shopping. The Japanese was lying in the kitchen with a gunshot wound to the head. As some buildings write, he was the leader of the local Yakuza group. In addition to the mafia itself, the Japanese and other governments are fighting the Yakuza. In 2016 alone, 20,050 Yakuza members were arrested. In 2015, this figure was 1,600 more people. In 2018, Japan handed death sentences to 7 members of the Aum Shinrikyo gang, which was responsible for the 1995 Tokyo subway incident. Then the criminals sprayed sarin gas. As a result, 13 people died and another 6,000 were poisoned. 2 years ago, a Japanese district judge sentenced 74-year-old crime syndicate leader Namori Soturo to death by hanging. He was accused of organizing 4 murders. His victims included a nurse, police officers, and the leader of a fishermen's cooperative. In 2023, Japanese police detained 5 Yakuza members suspected of smuggling sea cucumbers. According to Japanese media reports, they seized 624 kilograms of sea cucumbers from the territory of a local fishing cooperative. In 2022, American intelligence services detained one of the leaders of Japan's largest organized crime group, the Yakuza, Takeshi Basov, who was trying to purchase air defense missiles stolen from a U.S. military base in Afghanistan. Just think about it. As payment for the weapons, the Yakuza planned to bring at least a ton of drugs into the United States to sell them on the streets of New York and other cities. A few years ago, Sabi Harusraya, a former high-ranking member of the Yakuza, was detained in Thailand. Police detained him in central Thailand thanks to a photo that surfaced on Facebook. The Yakuza himself was at that moment on the international wanted list. Besides everything, the Yakuza also did good deeds. This, of course, doesn't make it clearer, but we'll tell you anyway. In 1995, many people were injured due to the Kobe earthquake. It was the Japanese mafia that helped many of them. People were transported from the affected areas on scooters, boats, and helicopters owned by the Yakuza. In 2011, when Japan was flooded by a tsunami, the Yakuza were one of the first to respond. In many places along the coast, the mafia began distributing free food and water to victims before the government did. The Yakuza helped clear the rubble and house displaced families. During the coronavirus epidemic, the Yakuza distributed free protective masks and antiseptics to the population, which had become a scarce commodity at that time, and also carried out free disinfection of schools and hospitals. As a result of these actions, some began to compare the Japanese mafia to Robin Hood. Some Yakuza even take part in today's military operations. For example, a Japanese man with the call sign Harrison was a member of the Yakuza mafia for 20 years. According to him, after a prison sentence of 10 years, he came to Ukraine to atone for his sins. At the end we will tell you an interesting fact. At one time, Fedor Emelianenko was associated with the Yakuza. In 2003, he participated in the fights of the Pride organization, but after the fight with Yudinagat, the organizers did not pay the fee to the Russian fighter. According to some rumors, the Yakuza stood up for Emelianenko, threatening the organizers of the fight. This conflict was reported in the media, after which sponsors left the Pride and the organization went bankrupt.